Hey, this is I Can Teach You a Haskell, Lesson 4. We're going to cover some helpful commands for working within GHCI, Haskell's built-in read, evaluate, print loop program. So let's open up GHCI, and we'll begin with something very important, importing modules into the GHCI program. Now within GHCI, all of its commands begin with a colon, and to run a program from the terminal within GHCI, you write colon exclamation mark so we can see what directory we're in. We can even create a file from within GHCI. So we can do touch mymodule.hs. Now let's open up this script in another screen. And we can do module, mymodule, where. And as we discussed in a previous video, it's very important for all modules to begin with a capital letter. And within Haskell, it's considered very good practice to include type declarations along with our function declarations. So we can call this my function, and it will take in an integer, and it returns an integer. And this is the notation for type declarations. It has these two colons in between the function name and the types, and then the last type is always going to be what gets outputted, and anything before that is going to be what are the arguments into the functions. So we have my function x equals x times x, which is x squared. So if we go back to the GHCI program, let's clear this. We can load this module with the L command, load, which we can just use the L for. And we can load this module, mymodule.hs, and now we have access to the module. And we can run my function 2, which will output 4. Now, if we want to unload this module, we can just do :L again, without including any modules, and it's unloaded. Now, let's try copy and pasting what we wrote in the script into the GHCI program and see what happens there, if it works. So I'm just going to copy paste this. So the first line got inputted and it ran, and we got this error, not in scope, my function. Now, it looks like what happened was that only the first line of the function ran, line 3. So if we go back to the GHCI program, run load my module, looks like we get the same error once we comment out line 4, except this error seems to be more descriptive. It says the type signature from my function lacks an accompanying binding. So what this just means is that in Haskell you're not allowed to have type declarations if there's not a function declaration. What you can do is put x equal takes in an argument and it returns undefined. I believe this would work. But that's not what we're looking for here. What we can do is use Haskell's multi-line commands. So there are 3 ways to do this. The first one, and my favorite, is to use this curly bracket notation. So you can use colon, curly bracket, and now we can just copy and paste this. And now it's running it all at one time. And we end that with this closed curly bracket. But we are going to run into one tiny problem, which we'll point out now, which is that within the GHCI program, everything's running within a do block, which is a topic, more advanced topic we'll cover later. But we can easily redeem from that by using let commands. So we'll just do let my function takes in an integer, returns an integer, and then we indent, which is important, and we just have the my function x equals x times x. And now it works, my function 2. And the other 2 ways to write multi-line commands are to either include everything on one line using semicolons. So we can do let my function type declaration integer takes in an integer and returns an integer, semicolon, my function x equals x times x. And now that works. Or we can use the set GHCI command to change the setting within Haskell to go to multi-line command. So we can use set plus m, which goes into multi-line mode. And now we can do let my function takes in an integer, returns an integer. And now you see where it says my module, there's a line there which shows that we're in multi-line mode. So now we can write my function x equals x times x. And enter one more, and now it works. Now let's say we want to change the script that we wrote in my module. So if we want to make it x to the third instead of x times x, what we can do is use reset, which reloads the module without having to exit the program. So now we run my function 2, and it returns 8. And a very useful command to find out what we've imported into our GHCI program is to use the browse command, which is I type in b, colon b. Oops. B gets reduced to break, so this command you do have to type out browse. And this should return my function, takes an integer and returns an integer. Excellent. And something else I'd like to notice, to point out, is that before we loaded my module up at the top here, you see it says Prelude on the prompt. And Prelude is the built-in module that comes with comes with Haskell, whereas my module is the module we imported. Now let's look more into my function. If we didn't know what my function does, we can type in t, colon t, my function, and it will return the type declaration for my function again. Now let's unload my module, and now let's run browse again. And now these are all the Prelude functions. It's a very long list. Now one of these is words here. If we run t words, then we see it takes in a string and returns an array of strings. Now, a more advanced topic to cover is kind. Kind tells us not just the type, not the type of a function, but it's almost the type of a function. So we can run kind on a string. And what is a string? String doesn't take in any arguments because it's what's called a concrete type. Whereas if we run kind on maybe, it takes in a type. So we can have maybe integer, maybe string, maybe something else, and then it will return a concrete type. And this is an advanced topic, so we'll cover this later. But that concludes what you need to know for using the GHCI program. And we'll conclude this lesson with one final command, which is :q, which will exit the program. See you soon.